Welcome to the Checkered Shorts Podcast, a podcast of three fraternity brothers reconnected by the love of IndyCar. Join us for grid-rival IndyCar fantasy talk, predictions for upcoming races, and reactions to race day results and all things IndyCar. Let's go racing! Welcome back to the Checkered Shorts Podcast for episode 4. This will be our midweek episode. We're excited, thrilled to be with you again. And this week, we're going to start off with a new segment we're going to put in each week in our midweek episode, and that is our power rankings for the week based off of the finish. You know, you also got to throw in some history there, but where we think each driver ranks in the power rankings. And we each had our own individual opinions, but then Brian averaged them for us, so we have our show rankings. So, Brian, let's get us kicked off with where we're at on our power rankings.
Yeah, we'll run down through this real quick. I think at the top of the list, we were all kind of in agreement. Obviously, at number one, I think after the performance that Palou and his team put together, we all had him at our number one. So obviously that averages out in the first spot, and then follow that up with the two strong Penske drivers from this weekend. Our average came out that Newgarden ended up in second, kind of our number two driver, and then Scott McLaughlin there at number three. We were all kind of in agreement too with the fact that Scott Dixon was a top 5 driver this weekend, and so that averaged out into fourth place for us. In fifth place, there was a little bit of disagreement here, and we can jump into that in a minute. But Palou Award ended up being our fifth ranked driver at this point in the season, followed closely behind by Colton Herta. And, you know, we touched on him last episode on some of the struggles he had this weekend, but he was really strong when the car was on track and running. And then followed next by his teammate in seventh, Kyle Kirkwood. And then right behind him was the third Penske driver, Will Power. And then to round out our top 10, then Christian Lundgaard comes in at number 9, and then Marcus Ericsson rounds out the Andretti crew at number 10. So 10, starting with Palou at 1 and our Ericsson at 10. Guys, what are your initial thoughts on what you see?
My initial thoughts is I got to say shenanigans, because I saw Pat's vote and I know where my vote was. So how did O'Ward end up at number 5?
Yeah, where'd you put him? Dinwiddie?
So I'll be honest. Yesterday, he went from the back to not to the front. He went from the back to what he finished, Pat?
11th.
11th. Okay.
Strong.
We're talking about top 10 drivers here, and he doesn't even finish in the top 10. He didn't practice well. He didn't qualify well. He's done in the past. I get that's all he has. He's got all these quick hands. But from Friday to Sunday, he just, as far as the 2025 season goes, he hasn't proven anything to me yet. And so I had him at 10th.
So what he proved to me was the race car in the seat, the race driver in the seat had the skill, because he didn't move up because of tire strategy. He moved up in spite of it. He ended up pretty much screwed whenever he had a punctured tire and he had to go back to the alternates later. And he still managed to move up that distance.
Yeah, that's legitimate. I could see that.
He had the roughest go at it yesterday. And his history, you should know better than put him 10th. But I do see your point. He did have a rough weekend. But 10th is, you're not, what's the commercial call him? A groupie right now for Palou.
Anti-groupie.
Yeah.
I mean, I put Veekay ahead of him. I know Veekay didn't make our top 10, but I had Veekay on the list because I felt like he was in. You talk about equipment, I felt like Veekay was in worse equipment yesterday than O'Ward was, and got himself the top 10 out of it.
No, it was interesting when you asked us to rank our top 10s, Dinwiddie. It was fun to see where we kind of felt. Obviously, Palou, Newgarden, Scotty Mac, 1, 2, and 3-ish, give or take. Where does Dixon fall? Probably really close to 5. I think we are all in line. And then it's Lundgaard. Remember Lundgaard has won some races. He was on a arguably crappy team with Ray Hall, did win some races, was by far their best driver. Now is on an arguably top 3, top 4 team with Arrow. So can he do something? Let's see. You would think he can win some races, although Rossi didn't, with a better team. So that was somebody we didn't really talk about yesterday, or after the race day. So he's in that middle that can be very fluctuating here in the next couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, I would say he proved something by the way he drove on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, he led how many laps of that race? You know, there's a big portion of that race that he was leading. I know that was based off of tires and pitting.
Right.
But he also ran those tires for a long time, much longer than some of the other drivers did.
It's true, but you want to call shenanigans? I'll call shenanigans on the guy who wears his Arrow McLaren stuff. Like you had Palou and Lundgaard both in your top 6 drivers right now. Like a little favoritism to the.
That's there you go.
Looks like to me, but
Hell, they invest. They're one of those teams that are out there putting it out there on the track.
surprised you didn't put Siegel up there. I mean,
I think
his power rankings should have been just as high as Power.
There you go.
I didn't have Power in my top 10.
Yeah, you don't have Power in your top 10. Like, come on.
I don't. Again, what's he done?
Well, he wrecked the first lap. Like, but he's still arguably top 5.
Is he? He didn't qualify well. He didn't practice well.
Okay, well, this is what it's all about, I guess. I think
I believe Will Power will move up as the season goes on, but at this point in the season,
sure,
I don't have him in the top 10.
No, that's fair. I think people discuss Armstrong. I think he's close. I put him at 10th. Maybe a little bit premature in that, but he was running fine until he had the mishap with the tire. Him and Fro were both running pretty good for Meyer Shank there until Armstrong. So I want to see what he can do. I still think he hopefully can be one of the up and comers to take out, a Dixon or Power once they finally fade out. But just looking over here, Lundgaard on Kirkwood.
I would like to circle back to Power for just a minute because we did mention him on the last pod. And as far as, an hour two after the race, you still hadn't heard anything about that lap 1 accident. So I do think he did the stand-up thing. I know that, Brian, you mentioned you read something this morning.
Yeah, I did. I did see that there was a quote from Will saying that he did run into the back and cause that accident. But he also did explain, too, that in the past, turn 3 things have opened up a little more than they did this year. So I think he thought he could get on the gas there and go. Obviously, it wasn't intentional for him to run into the back of somebody, but he did come out and admit that was his fault. So I apologize to Will for what I said on Sunday.
Hey, and then Pat, your inside source in the there in the pits, he heard basically in the paddock that he was going ahead and stepping up to the other drivers.
He listened to it and he's like, Will did, or they did say Will hit him. I was like, man, it was nothing on the broadcast after we watched it. So did what he doing his due diligence and did report that Will did take fault. And he said it was narrow. He said it sounded like the guy's been racing there for 20 years and he probably has. Mm-hmm. So he was like, man, I just doing what I normally do back then. And he just got racing incident, sounds like, but he did take fault for it. So
can we, before we move on from the power rankings, like you mentioned him briefly, but he's nowhere on any of our list is Felix Rosenquist.
Nope.
I mean, I didn't even think about that till we went through this list. Like I think that I should have had him up here because, he had a top 10 finish, didn't he?
Yeah, he's 7th, man. He's just
qualified in the fast 6. Like he was good all weekend, and he's a proven guy. Like, he's got that Ganassi connection now. Maybe he needs to have some consideration on this list as we move forward. I can see where have him up there.
He falls in that list for me for, so Felix, he goes in with Rossi, I think. Those two really stick out to me as those guys that really have to prove something right now. Veekay doesn't have to prove anything to me right now. Connor Daly, is not going to prove anything right now. Those two guys can do it. I mean, remember when Wickens and Rossi used to go at it, like that the 100th running when Rossi won, like those were Rossi was going to be the next superstar.
Yeah.
Hasn't done anything yet. Ericsson had a 6th place. He's kind of in that caliber of those 3 drivers. I think can still do it, but I'm ready for them. Like let's get some more action out of them. So
by the way, I'm the only one that had Ericsson in my top 10 too. So
and it's a good argument to make. I think it'd be a 50-50 split if we pulled some more people. Like, where's Ericsson?
Yeah.
So
I can see myself getting on board with Rosenquist, especially now that if the nickname picks up, that Buxton kept referring to him as Rosie on the broadcast. I think I like that. I could go cheer for a Rosie.
I've always heard Fro.
Yeah.
Like even drivers refer to him as Fro. So I was really shocked to hear the Rosie piece, but that seemed like it was catching on, and it was something that was a real thing. So
yeah, it rolled off the tongue, and Buxton could have came up with it right then, and that's why I liked it. It seemed like it was just it's Rosie. Cool, awesome. Yeah, no, this is fun. You can go 12 different directions and make good arguments for a Fro or a Rosie or a Veekay or Kirkwood, like where they should be. But I think the top 3-ish are solid. Then 4 after, then you can really start diving into what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to shift gears, start talking about teams a little bit, specifically from St. Pete. Which teams impressed us? Which teams did exactly what you expected they would and could do, and which teams didn't fare so well?
I'll take the lead on an impressive team, and tough pill to swallow sometimes. I'm not a big Ed Carpenter fan. I'll be the first to admit it. But I think his team showed up pretty well yesterday. Talking about Rossi and needing to kind of, show what he can do. A 10th place finish out of him. And then Rasmussen was, I think, 15th. So I think it's really good for ECR on a road course. They're notoriously towards the back for the most part. They don't have they're at the bottom tier of the teams. Everybody knows that. I'm not trying to make fun of them, but I think it was a good showing for both of those drivers. Rasmussen, we still have to figure out who the heck that kid is. And we touched on Rossi already. So a good solid finish, more so just because they're just not great at road courses. They can do some stuff on ovals. Everybody knows Daly and Ed can be fast on ovals, but road courses, they usually crap the bed. So I thought that was my team highlight, I guess.
Yeah, I think, I'd also toss in there that when they did the preseason test at Sebring, they had a lot of mechanical issues and didn't get much track time compared to other teams. So for them to perform the way they did this weekend, that's really good. Keith, what about you? Who impressed you?
Kind of maybe a little under the radar or dark horse, Dale Coyne with Renus's finish. He had a strong day, and he just picked up that ride less than a month ago. To come in and join a team, and it's got to be a team. They got to gel. There's so many moving parts, and so it seems like they're off to a great start.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree with you. And I'm going to take the easy way out. You guys seem to do that for me a lot, but I gotta give a shout out to those top 2 teams. I mean, it's the last 20 years they've won pretty much every season championship. But Ganassi and Penske again were just strong. These strong with cars, strong with strategy, and put them in those top four spots in the race. So once again, that's just super impressive. But I'll flip it then and talk about teams that didn't look very strong. And, you can probably see in some of the things that are sitting behind me. Like I've always been an AJ Foyt racing fan. I grew up a big AJ fan. And I'm going into this year, I was super excited, because we've seen what Ferrucci's done. We know he's got the talent. We know he can do some things. He finished 9th or 10th in the final standings last year. And you throw a guy like David Malukas in there, who we know that kid is kind of the, Pat, you referred to it in an earlier episode, like he's that next group that's coming, and he doesn't even have a Foyt contract. He has a Penske contract. So I was really looking forward to seeing what they were going to do this weekend, and they were meh. Like, I don't know, Pat, you got the race.
Yeah, 13th and 14th.
13th and 14th, like
Malukas, Ferrucci.
All day long. They just kind of just cruised around, and both of those guys are so talented. Like, they just didn't seem to push it. Maybe they just didn't have the equipment, but just kind of disappointed in their performance this weekend.
Yeah, I think I think it might have been Racer, it might not have been so they ranked the preseason teams on where they thought everybody would land, and of course it's Penske and then Ganassi and Andretti. They put Prima at 5th, so I was like, oh, do I not know something about Prima's really big in Europe and has millions and billions of dollars to spend. So they had the money to come to IndyCar, and that's why they did. But they put him 5th. I was like, oh, not that there's 20 teams in IndyCar, but they didn't do anything yesterday. Granted, it's Schwartzman's first real race. He's been in an IndyCar, but he's never raced in the IndyCar. And then Callum's been away for a couple of years. So, I guess I was going just based off that article. I thought they knew something that I didn't. Everybody else, I think, kind of stayed where they should have been. Ray Hall didn't wow you. Juncos, unfortunately did Juncos things. And then everybody else, Arrow, Andretti, Penske, Ganassi kind of fell in where they fell in. Meyer Shank could have finished a little bit stronger if Armstrong didn't have that incident with the tire. So that would have been interesting. He was right. He was up there at least, easy a top 10 finish. So, but yeah.
I don't think you left any teams for me, Pat.
Oh, darn it.
Anyone that spent much time with Pat probably knows where I'm coming from on this, but it happens on occasion.
Oh, okay.
To be a good friend of Pat, you got to be a good listener.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I didn't really. I'm looking at the list. Yeah, sorry, Keith.
The safety team, they did not disappoint.
There you go.
As always, they were Johnny on the spot, taking care of business. That's my favorite team.
That's good. That's good conversation. Pat, I know that we've got an upcoming episode this next week on Sunday, and then we've got an off a couple of weeks. But you want to kind of give us a preview of what's coming up? Sunday?
Yeah, we got
a special episode.
Up and coming driver through the IndyCar ranks. Started as a kid in the karting world. Is local to the Indianapolis area. I'm not going to give any names or anything. You're also going to have to tune in, folks. But he's working his way through the IndyCar ranks, USF 2000, USF Pro 2000. So excited to have him on. Is legitimate, is a race car driver, has some history, has won, has podiumed, has done like super cool things for being he might be 17, 18 now. So I'll give you that. Tune in next week with us, hang out as we talk to him. And what else?
Keith, I don't know. Upcoming episodes too is kind of your idea. Do you want to talk about the kind of IndyCar 101 type of things we're gonna?
Yeah, I thought it would be fun, especially with the big push right now to get drivers out front and try to sell the sport to a new audience. That if you're new to IndyCar, when I got into it, you're either, up to your eyeballs in racing and you understood every aspect, or you didn't know anything like me, and you're kind of intimidated to try to jump right in with those guys. They're talking racing and things are going back and forth, and you pick up this and you hear that and you assume this. And then if you go with some good people, like I had the opportunity to, I asked a lot of questions, and by asking those questions, I learned a lot of things. And sometimes we even said, well, you know what, we're not sure how that affects things, so we'll check it out. And then we got together and talked about it. So what we like to do is just start introducing some topics, answering some things that may seem obvious to someone who's been watching for years, but to the newcomers, that'll make the race watching that much more enjoyable. It's fun to see them really get after it when they come off a yellow, or when they're a couple of laps to the checkered flag, and that's a thrill. But to understand the little nuances makes it much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that too. We talked about two topics tonight that I think there are a lot of people out there probably have some comments or have some input. If you're listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, and use that comment section and throw in there, what kind of topics would you like to know about, or what do you think fans would want to know from that IndyCar 101 type of standpoint? And then two, you saw the back and forth we had about our power rankings. Like, how do you feel? Like, who's the idiot? Is it the guy who puts all the McLaren guys at the top, or the guy that doesn't take the truly popular ones? Am I wrong and not having an award and power up there in my top five? So jump in there and interact with us. We'd love to hear about it, and maybe we'll share some of those on our next episode.
Yeah, I think to Keith's point real quick, that we have a road course coming up, not a street course next. So to the Indy 101, IndyCar 101, what's that? How's that different? Touch base on that. I think that's really cool. And then, as ovals come about, a different oval from IMS to Iowa to Milwaukee, stuff like that, we can all touch on. So that's cool. I'm good. Catherine Legg is going to be racing in NASCAR.
Oh, really?
Yeah, saw that today. She's not our favorite. Mad Dog, we should be upset. Shout out to Ryan Maddox. And Keith does have hair. Everybody that's watching.
All right.
Good head of lettuce.
Doug Bowles is my president, by the way.
Nice.
Love that shirt. So yeah, great head of lettuce, Keith. I'm good. Unless you guys got anything else.
I don't think so. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Checkered Shorts, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
See y'all.
All right. Take care.
All right.